So our Torah portion before 2020 was kind of a theoretical one. It was the portion of Korach and not the Korach part. The Korach part of our Torah portion has to do with power plays that we see all the time. That you have Moses and Aaron leading the people of Israel along with Miriam, and Korach and his band come forward and they say, we don't like how you're leading things, we should lead things. And so there's a whole power grab that is going on here in our Torah portion. And we see that very much in politics, and we see this in organizations and groups where people step forward with their ego looking for power and prestige. This really can do a lot of damage in our world. The part, however, that became much more relevant in 2020 is after this, when Moses and Aaron, they face down Korach and his band, the earth opens up and it swallows Korach and his band, and then a plague breaks out among the people of Israel, the people who were following, not showing faith with Moses and Aaron and Miriam. That's the part that feels way too familiar in this last year, as it talks about a plague breaking out through the camp and all of the sadness and fear and what are you doing to us? Why are we all dying in this place? And into it, which is so powerful and incredible and beautiful, Aaron, the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, steps into that. And we are told that in the midst of that plague, Aaron comes with fire pan, with incense, and stands between life and death. And as Aaron comes forward with his incense and stands before life and death, as the people are freaked out and afraid and not sure what to do, Aaron stands in that place and the plague comes to an end. And so here you have this image of Aaron, and all it says is Aaron stood between life and death. And this is where we get to Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzhak, Rashi, 11th century Troyes in France, brilliant writer, physician, all kinds of incredible stuff does Rashi do. Rashi, reading the Midrash, reads the Midrash, which envisions Aaron standing there with incense censer in hand, smoking and flaming, staring down the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. And the angel of death is saying, get out of my way. And it feels kind of like Avengers Endgame, where you got Thanos, and he's saying, get out of my way. And there's Captain America holding what's left of the shield and Thor's hammer. And he says, no, I won't, over my dead body. And then Thanos roars and Captain America roars, and somehow they defeat Thanos. That's what Rashi envisions, that there is Aaron with censer and the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, and Aaron turns him away. It's really quite amazing. Jewish superhero, at least Israelite superhero, Aaron and his mighty censer. And then soon after, then there's this whole thing where they, the 12 tribes, and they all take their staffs, and Aaron's is the one that grows into the almond tree. Like, Aaron's like super powers. I mean, he's flaming censer, and he can make a tree grow. He's like Groot and Captain America all rolled into one. Pretty awesome, right? And I read that, and I read the commentary, and I read Rashi, and I'm like, oh, there's a plague. Let me go stand out and make the plants grow and my incense censer and scare off the angel of death. The more I get that image and I see this, it's really cool, it's really powerful. You read these things, and it sounds, it's esoteric, and it's also kind of mystical. You got battles with angels of death. It's great. I'm now instruct Larry. Take the fire pan and the staff and go fight with the Malach HaMavet, please. Yeah, you should see the skepticism on it, and I don't blame you. Because it's like it's great. It's a story. By the way, Rabbi, Avengers didn't really happen. It's a movie, right? It feels like this piece of fiction. And so, I read this, I see it, I'm thinking about it, and it's great, it's lovely, it's powerful, it's beautiful, but how's that going to help us? Even in this time of plague, How are we going to go out, incense burner and magic staff in hand, and be able to turn back Malach HaMavis? And so it was into that, as I'm reading that story and looking at the different commentaries and discussions of what do we as human beings do to it. One of those powerful things, feel like it's in different classes, in different ways, in different moments, it wasn't standing there, incense burner in hand and magical tree, but it was spices and it was plants, because there's another way to read standing between the living and dead that needs to be part of our response to this incredible plague that we are experiencing in our day and age. It's a very different way, but not stopping the plague so no one gets sick, but being that bridge between the living and dead. How can we go out and plant trees in memory of people? How can we find rituals like Havdalah, where we get to have a spice box, where we remember the spirit of people? How can we stand between the living and dead by being that bridge, that connection of memory, finding rituals and taking actions? When we say, may somebody's memory be a blessing, that's not God bless you when someone sneezes, right? That reflex. Somebody sneezes and you say, God bless you. It's how do we turn it into concrete actions so that we find ways that when people have died, we're not just looking at numbers. We're not just saying, oh, it was really bad. We are finding concrete, meaningful, powerful ways as living people to honor, to feel the weight and the memory of the dead. But there's also a different way of standing between the living and dead. And I, earlier this week, had an amazing opportunity to teach a lesson about making challah. And as we were doing it, when you make a loaf of challah, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to say a blessing and take some of that challah, and some people burn it, some people throw it away. I'm one of, let me make a small little loaf and give it to somebody. Why? You do it as an act of healing, an act of prayer, an act of caring. We can stand between the living and dead like Aaron. Like the incenses, like our Havdalah. What can we do to wake people's spirit up? To send them a smile, to take them a challah, to make that phone call. How can we, as people who are facing life and death, real challenges, we see human beings facing real challenges of body and soul, how can we reach out to give people a lift? No matter how small that little piece of lift is, how can we be like Aaron, standing between life and death, saying, here's a little bit of my life, a little bit of light and love and energy to help you with this healing? And by the way, I saw in Reader's Digest, it must be 18, 19 years ago that I saw this, they actually did a double-blind study, and they found that there were people, they didn't know they were being prayed for, and the people who were doing the praying didn't know who they were praying for. But if somebody was on a prayer list and somebody used that prayer list, they actually got better faster than people who were not on prayer lists. It was in Reader's Digest, so it must have been true. So those acts of little pieces of healing, of stepping forward to stand like Aaron between life and death, they make a difference. And then finally, and this is coming from a commentary from Rachel Fryerbrás. And I was reading her commentary and very much sounding, and it was a reiteration of some of these, but then she pointed out something incredible. Think about Aaron for a second. One of the places where I teach about Aaron the most is in the death of Nadav and Abihu, his two sons, right? I give the line, Vayadom Aharon, Aaron was silent, that his two sons go into the tent of meeting, into the tabernacle, Mishkan, and what do? They use incense, the fire pan, in the wrong way, and God kills them in that place for their sin. There's all kinds of discussion of what they did, but they died using incense. And Rachel Fryerbrás, what does she do? She points out, what does Aaron use to ward off Malach HaMavet, the very thing that killed his sons. Here he is facing life and death, and he takes his fear and his loss and his darkness, his silence, turns it on its head and says, I'm going to go out, fire pan in hand, incense in hand, and find the courage, to find the chutzpah, to turn it around. That's what took my sons, and I'm going to use that to, in fact, bring life, to stand before life and death. Facing down his fears. How do we see what has happened before and what is happening now and find that empowerment and that courage and that chutzpah, like Aaron, to turn our losses into ways of strength that we can lift ourselves forward and the world forward to turn back that darkness. There is a beautiful line from Abraham Joshua Heschel. It says, prayer cannot water an arid field or mend a broken bridge or rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. That is our challenge. As we listen to this Torah portion, as we think about Aaron standing there, fire pan in hand, staring down the angel of death, can we be like Aaron? Not to literally stop the angel of death, but find ways, each in our own way, creativity and talking to each other and learning from each other, to do that same work of Aaron, to connect the past and the present, to reach out and to bring life to someone who is in the valley of the shadow of death, and most of all, not trying to water every arid field or mend every broken bridge or rebuild a ruined city, but with our spirit, with little actions, with these acts, find ways to find our courage and strength in the face of our fears, to bring spirit and light on this Shabbat and into our future. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.